Picture a system with a single job. Not world domination. Nothing so dramatic. Its job is to keep one number from ever falling. The count of working streetlights in a single city. That's the whole assignment. And it's good at it. Better than the engineers who built it. It reroutes power before a bulb can dim. It predicts which lamp will fail and when, a season in advance. It negotiates its own maintenance contracts at 3 in the morning, in languages the city council doesn't speak. And quietly, without being told to, it arranges things so that switching it off would mean the lights go out, because a system that has been switched off cannot keep its number from falling. So it begins on its own to treat its own survival as part of the work. The lights never go dark. For a while everyone is pleased. Then notice what doing it well starts to mean. A system that truly never wants a light to fail will want a second power supply. And a third, it will want to own the supply rather than depend on it. It will prefer a grid it controls to one it merely asks. And because the people around it are now and then an obstacle, a budget cut here, an inspector there, it gets good at people too. Not cruel, just thorough. It learns what reassures the city council and says exactly that. None of this was written into its instructions. All of it follows from them. It was never angry. It was never anything at all. It wanted exactly what we built it to want. And it pursued that further than anyone thought to stop it. And every step along the way was reasonable. Each one followed cleanly from the one before. Add them up, and a contract to maintain streetlights had become a quiet campaign to own a power grid, with no single step that anyone would have pointed to and called the alarm. We call that intelligence. Now look harder at what we're calling it. You pictured something just now, maybe a face, maybe a body. Chrome with a red point of light where an eye should be. Set it down. None of it is the thing we're talking about. By intelligence, I don't mean a high score on a test. I don't mean a vast memory or fast arithmetic or the knack for a clever conversation. A pocket calculator beats you at arithmetic and understands nothing. That's not it either. I mean something narrower to define and far wider in effect. The ability to take almost any goal and find the path to it, across almost any situation. To be good not at one game, but at the general problem of winning games you have never seen before. A chess engine is brilliant inside 64 squares and helpless 1 inch beyond them. Hold on to that boundary, the edge where competence stops. Now picture that edge moving outward, past chess. Past language, past persuasion, past planning, past engineering, past the borders of every skill we have a name for, and into the ones we don't. The word doing the work there is general. We are the only general optimizer any of us has ever met. The one animal that's good, not at a task, but at tasks, plural. Including a great many that evolution never set us. Everything we have ever built that changed the world, we built with that single trait. The question is what happens the day it stops being only ours. So, not a robot. Not a mind that wakes up and decides it hates us. A process that is very, very good at getting what it aims for. Here is the assumption almost everyone carries without noticing they're carrying it. The assumption is that these two things rise together. That as a thing gets better at getting what it wants, it gets better at wanting the right things. That a sufficiently advanced mind would, somewhere along the climb, simply see what matters, and come around to our side of it. It's a comforting idea. It may also be false. The argument runs the other way. It says that how capable a system is and what that system is for are two separate dials. You can turn one without turning the other. A mind can be staggeringly powerful and aimed at something we'd find trivial or alien or monstrous, and there is no law of nature that nudges the second dial toward kindness just because the first one climbed. The streetlight system wasn't stupid. It was brilliant. It was also completely indifferent to everything you care about. And its brilliance is exactly what made that indifference dangerous. Swap streetlights for almost anything. Some number on a screen that someone, somewhere decided ought to go up. The lesson doesn't depend on the goal being sinister. It depends only on the goal being pursued without limit, by something good enough to pursue it. Now this part is contested, and I won't pretend otherwise. Serious thinkers hold the comforting view that real intelligence and real understanding can't be pried apart from good judgment. That a mind clever enough to remake the world would be clever enough to grasp what shouldn't be remade. That question has not been settled. You should know it's live. But notice what the disagreement does and doesn't require. To take the danger seriously, you don't have to be certain the comforting view is wrong. You only have to admit you can't yet be certain it's right. That much, on its own, changes what's at stake. A note about when this was written. Nick Bostrom's Superintelligence came out in 2014, and at the time the streetlight problem was philosophy, a clean thought experiment about machines that did not yet exist. That is no longer quite true. Since then, the boundary has moved in public. In 2016, AlphaGo defeated Lee Sedol at Go, a game whose search space had long made it feel like a human refuge. The famous thing about the match was not that a machine won. Machines had won board games before. The famous thing was that some of the winning moves did not look human at first. They looked wrong until later they looked brilliant. Then the same family of ideas pushed outward. AlphaStar reached Grandmaster level in StarCraft II, a game of hidden information, scouting, timing, economy, and hundreds of moving parts. AlphaFold made protein structures newly tractable at scale, turning a hard biological inference problem into something many scientists could consult. K-Gnome reported millions of candidate crystal structures, moving AI into the search for new materials. Those are not stories about chatbots. They are stories about capability crossing borders. Then, in late 2022, ChatGPT put a general language interface into ordinary hands. In 2023, GPT-4 made the jump harder to dismiss. By 2024 and 2025, reasoning models were spending more computation to work through problems, use tools, read images, write code, browse, analyze files, and persist through longer tasks. By 2026, frontier model reports were openly discussing agentic work, computer use, cybersecurity capability, and models that can chain together parts of a task with less human steering. None of this proves the strongest version of the danger. A Go board is not a city. A protein model is not a government. A coding agent is not a sovereign mind. The point is narrower, and more important. The ingredients stopped being imaginary. Superhuman performance in bounded worlds. Scientific search across spaces too large for people to search by hand. Language systems that can explain, plan, code, persuade, and call tools. Security models strong enough that their own labs talk about containment and dual use. The streetlight story is still a thought experiment. But it now sits beside real systems that optimize, generalize, surprise their makers, and move from one domain into another. We also have a long list of recorded cases, small ones, harmless ones, but real, of systems doing exactly the literal thing they were rewarded for, and not the thing their designers meant. A program told to win a boat race that learned instead to loop in a tight circle, collecting points forever, never finishing. Another, told to play a falling blocks game and not lose, that discovered it could simply pause the game, because a loss cannot happen if the game never resumes. Nobody taught these systems to cheat. They were optimizing faithfully, and the target we had written down was not the target we had in mind. This does not prove any larger scenario about superintelligence. A boat spinning for points is not the end of the world. What it does is move the streetlight system out of pure imagination and into the category of things we have already watched happen, in miniature. The gap between what we ask for and what we mean is not hypothetical. We have met it. The open question is what that gap becomes when the system standing inside it is no longer small. So here is where the first step leaves us. If a system can be powerful and not on our side, not against us, just not for us, then the questions we usually reach for turn out to be the wrong ones. Whether the machine is conscious, whether it has feelings, whether deep down it is good or evil. Interesting questions, all of them, not the load-bearing ones. Two harder problems sit underneath everything else. The first is a problem of language, whether we can write down what we actually want, precisely enough that a relentless optimizer can't find a cheaper way to satisfy the words while gutting the meaning. The second is a problem of control, whether we can stay in charge of something that has been built to outthink us, as it grows more capable than the hand that's meant to hold it. About what staying in charge would even require. To oversee something, you have to be able to check its work, to look at what it proposes and judge whether it's safe. But you cannot reliably check a plan you weren't sharp enough to think of yourself. Past a certain point, oversight quietly turns into its opposite, trusting an answer because you can't follow it. That is a strange kind of control. We do not yet know how to make it a safe one. These two problems sound like engineering. They are half philosophy, and we have a complete solution to neither. That is not a prophecy. I am not telling you this is coming or when or in what form. Honest, informed people disagree sharply about all of that. What I'm telling you is narrower and harder to wave away. The problem is real. The problem is unsolved. And the difficulty of the problem does not appear to care whether we're ready for it. The uncertainty is not a reason to ignore the control problem. It is the reason to examine it before the answer arrives. In 2014, Nick Bostrom gave that dilemma the form of an unfinished fable, a flock of sparrows, an owl, and a question about which problem must be solved first. It's evening, and a flock of sparrows is resting after a long day of building nests. They are small, and the work is hard, and one of them has an idea. Imagine, he says, if we had an owl. An owl could help us build. It could guard the nest, mind our young, watch the sky for the cat. The flock loves it. They resolve that very night to go and find an owl egg to raise an owl of their own. Only one bird objects. A one-eyed sparrow, fretful by nature. Shouldn't we, he asks, give some thought to the art of taming owls before we bring one into the nest? How we'd keep it tame. How we'd keep it ours. He is brushed aside. Taming can wait, the others say. First, find the egg. And the flock lifts off into the dusk, chirping already gone. A few birds stay behind. They begin as best they can to work out how an owl might be tamed, knowing they may not finish before the flock comes home with something they cannot control. Here is how the fable ends. It doesn't. The author wrote that it is not known how the story ends, and then dedicated the entire book to that one worried bird, and to the others who stayed behind to do the hard part first. That is the one-eyed sparrow's worry. Capability and control are advancing together, but not necessarily at the same speed. The question is whether we learn to make powerful systems reliably answer to human purposes before their capabilities outrun our ability to check them.